Okay, well, let's try it again. Okay, I've tried to explain my view on social deregulation, and basically, it's kind of simple on its onset. It's almost like economic deregulation for libertarians. Except, what I see is not economic uh, uh, non-regulation, but a small government minimal social regulation. And chiefly, the three social issues of social deregulation are race, gender, and sexuality. I consider economic issues to be environmentalism, well, wealth, health, and age. And I could consider that economic, because in some way, in a capitalist society, all those issues are tied to status and money. So, very simply, on the one hand, I'm moderate progressive when it comes to economics because I believe economics in a representative culture instead of a perpetual counterculture will solve many of our issues. Now, some of this has to do with also alternative energy and anti globalization. Basically, you could almost say I was a liberal when it comes to economics and a small government social conservative that was secular. I don't believe in any supernatural, but when it comes to issues that have to do with race, gender, or sexuality, I would say orientation, but I mean complete sexuality. And that includes broader topics such as prostitution, um, pornography, and such. Not just gender orientation, you see. I used to believe that even though I had a secular belief in the world, I used to believe there was an absolute morality because there was a kind of energy economics, a natural trade in nature of growth, change, and decay. And that social progressiveness really didn't address these issues. It skirted these issues just like conservative economics did about environmentalism. You could say that I didn't accept social progressiveness because I don't really believe it addressed these issues. I believe it perpetuated its own lobbies. What I mean by lobbies is that I mean that social advocacy groups in a counterculture situation now have an incentive to keep going, first and foremost, because they become a part of the system and yet they are apart from the system. There will never be a true representative culture with a counterculture mentality. We have a House of Representatives. If that House of Representatives is not working, we need to amend our government until all the populace is represented. If the will of the people is that a minority is not specifically represented to their complete satisfaction, this might have to be a price to pay. And yet, it cannot be so socially deregulated. In other words, with no civil liberties, that it creates a regressive state, such as blatant segregation, separatism, or supremacist organization on a broad social consensus. And yet, at the same time, I advocate a complete dismissal of our advocacy laws as the way they're set up, because I believe they are become corrupt, and corrupt in a system that is self-perpetuating their own lobbies, just like economic groups are perpetuating their own economic self-interest. Money flows, and it's very important that you see that. On one hand, it's profit-based, but on the other hand, it's funding-based. And how can we really trust groups, not in the hard sciences, where logic and hard facts can prevail, such as cosmology, biology, other things where empirical evidence can absolutely prove an almost complete conclusion to an issue that makes it very highly improbable that it's other than the deterministic natural order that it's in the real world. Evolution is real, the Big Bang is real, religion is being squeezed out. Okay, but when you get into the soft sciences, like things like where social issues interlap, then you have issues with tenure, funding, social pressures, advocacy groups, and I believe that social pressures can slip in and create a force that will alter the true nature of science in those disciplines to some degree. It's like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, except it's for social dynamics, because we're trying to freaking examine ourselves, and every time we try to examine ourselves, it changes the dynamic of the observation. So, very simply, I believe that once we establish an infrastructure that is sound, many of the social issues that we have in our day will disappear. And the ones that won't can be fully and more comprehensively addressed by government and people, that a constituency that is not having to deal with an overburdened system. The center can be dynamic, but it can be closer to each other without freaking two-party cultural conflict and polarization. We can amend our political system. We can reform the what was that called? The electoral college. We can change our voting methods and our party representation to where it is a more representative culture by state, by nation, and what is better for each nation and each group of nation. And this would be more conclusive to a more productive and less conflicted world. as well as solving some of our energy infrastructure problems, while also taking care of our issues with the environment in a sane and sound, reasonable way.